Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Geek Warning podcast. I'm Dave Rome, and a few weeks ago we promised a new podcast that involved much of the Escape team chatting about what they've been testing and what's coming up for being reviewed on Escape Collective. So with that, let me say hello to the team and I'll get you to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ronan, Senior Tech Editor at Escape Collective.
I'm Suvi. I'm just a tech reporter at Escape.
And I'm Alex, another tech reporter for Escape Collective.
Nice. So we've got the whole Europe, UK, Commonwealth plus Ireland contingent on board. So hello to all. Good to see you all. And I guess it's worth noting that we haven't done one of these episodes of Geek Warning before. So stick with us as we all figure it out. But the goal is to dive into one or two of the bikes that we've been testing and that we've each been testing and talk about maybe how far away that is and maybe some things on our mind in the meantime. And then a component or two that we're each thinking about at the moment for review. And we'll see if there's time. We've got a few other things to get through. So anyway, with that, let's talk about a few of the bikes that we've been spending time on. Alex, Suvi, I'm going to start with you both because you've got a new road bike in that's sort of been written about briefly on Escape, but you're both testing the same bike. What is it?
Yeah, so it's the new Scott Addict RC, and we both have the ultimate build, which is the top tier SRAM Red, flagship model. We've had it since October time, so we've had a full winter to test a super lightweight road bike.
Practical, very practical. Speaking of winters and a very lightweight bike, what intrigues me with that bike is how much weight is saved out of the tyres. It has those new Schwalbe Aerothan tyres. Is that correct?
Yes.
How have they fared, Suvi?
Well, I've managed to puncture them both. I have front tire now twice.
Oh.
And I have kind of given up with them for now, at least.
So going well.
Yeah, not too well. I think it is the winter's the worst time. Two of them, I think, were because hedges are being trimmed. I don't know why they've done it at the time that they're doing it, but yeah, there's a lot of thorns and things on the roads. But yeah, the tires are thin.
What have you done to keep rolling?
I've now actually swapped the wheels completely because why just swap the tires? To be honest, I will swap the tires as well. I just didn't have long enough valves for them because I wanted to set them tubeless. But yeah, I'm rolling on different wheels. So I've got the reserve wheels from the Caledonia, and it's been quite interesting to test that because obviously the wheels on the ultimate build are very light and stiff. So it's interesting to compare.
A bonded carbon wheel from Syncross, right? It's
exactly.
Like a very lightweight, capital SL, is it?
Yes.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably quite a different ride quality.
Dave, that kind of gets me wondering, like Suvi and Alex have said that the tyres are a bit of a nightmare on the thorn-laden roads that we have around these parts at this time of year. I'll add in that our roads
Alex nods.
tend to be covered in slurry also from the farmers fertilizing their fields. So if you get a puncture, it's really not nice. But I know like the chances of me having got as far as Suvi and Alex got with those tires is very slim. I probably would have changed those within a ride or two. I'm kind of interested. What's your approach to such alterations to review bikes?
My approach?
Like the question is, should we review them as spec, or should we make alterations to them that in all likelihood the end user is probably going to make also?
Yeah. For me, it's both, right? You test it as its spec, so you have an opinion on that, and then you test it with familiar touch points. So for me, like, I will typically put on a saddle I'm very familiar with, and I'll typically put on a wheel set with tires I'm very familiar with, and that kind of gets it closer to isolating largely just the frame, because like a saddle can actually make more of a difference than the frame can. And likewise for wheels, like, if you really want to discover how the ride quality of a frame is, you kind of got to get as much of it familiar. So for me, that's kind of where I'm sitting. But I would also say that in the case of these tires, if I went out the door the first ride and I got a flat tire, then I don't know if I'd be giving them too many second or third chances myself. I'd probably just be thinking like, this is now getting in the way of me reviewing the bike, and this is frustrating. But yeah, I might give them 2 chances.
In the tyres defence, I did get about 5 or 6 weeks before anything happened with the tyres. And then
Okay.
when they did, a hole appeared in the sidewall. So nothing happened, but then when it did, it was enough for me to sideline the tyres completely.
Yep. So those tires, like I haven't actually felt them myself. Are they like they're meant to be made of like a TPU material? Is that right? Like do they?
Yeah,
feel
they're
plasticky?
incredibly thin.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And clincher,
Oh,
is that touchy?
it's
Because they had tubes in them, right?
yeah. So currently, the spec for tyres are they are mounted to the Syncross capital wheels, which are hookless. But they are running TPU inner tubes because the tyre themselves are not tubeless compatible. And I think at least for the puncture Suvi's experience, if the tyre was tubeless, that would have probably gone a fair way to alleviate the issue. But the fact you're running TPU tubes, any puncture it feels worse than any other bike, because any other bike you probably wouldn't even be aware of it.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm just like...
right.
I've struggled with this since these tyres have been announced, because hookless was already confusing enough, or there at least is the opportunity for it to be confusing for people who don't care about it as much as we do, nor should they have to care. But then to have a hookless compatible tyre that isn't tubeless compatible is just all kinds of confusing.
Things. Yeah. It sure complicates the story, because if someone were to flat on these within first few weeks and they've replace the inner tubes, they're probably just thinking, I just need new tires again, and they're probably not going to go out and look for specifically a hookless compatible tire. So they might do their research, but not a guarantee on that one. So yeah, it's interesting. What else about the bike? Like, is there anything else that's standing out to you at this point in time that's good or bad?
I think overall the ride, like out on the road, the ride quality of the bike's really impressive, especially for a bike that's so light compared to super light bikes of the past. It rides really nicely, and I think when you get it, especially on the steeper gradients, that lack of weight does feel quite enjoyable. It feels like the bike just moves a little bit nicer than kind of like a 7-kilo bike would. Yeah, and around the Cotswolds where I live, there's plenty of 20% hills for me to have been lucky enough to try it on.
Gotcha. Yeah. Suvi, you've had a bit of a harsh winter, so you might not have got quite as much time on it as you would have liked at this point. But yeah, I mean, what are you finding? This bike came along with the news that they're ditching the Contessa range. How have you found the sizing of it?
It's quite a long bike, so I think I've talked about it with Alex as well. Like you probably, I mean, the Contessa, obviously, it wasn't, the geometry on it didn't change compared to the unisex model. So it's just maybe the touch points that would have been slightly different. But I do get along with the size that I have. I'm riding the extra small. I could probably size to the smallest, the extra small, if I wanted to be more aggressive, which, yeah, could be a possibility. But I've got along with this one quite well. It's got 38 handlebar and 165 crank still, which would be, the handlebar would go down to 36 on the smallest size. So that could be potentially a good thing for me. But cranks would be still the same length. But I've fit on it quite well. Saddle, I think both of us have agreed, is as light as and nice looking as it is, it's not very comfortable. Again, this is something I tried to endure with it for a bit, and I was like, no, like I can't get along with it. So I've changed to my go-to saddle, which has changed the ride feel as well, because I can actually ride 100k on it now without feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, right. Nice. What is that go-to saddle?
I use the Specialized Mimic, or Power, to be honest. Yeah, Power Mimic. But I do get along with just the regular.
Funny, we both have the same preferred saddle.
Yeah, it just, since I started riding with that saddle, it's just, I guess that's the thing as well. It's that familiar feeling, like you were describing. Like I want that on a test bike, even if I get along with the saddle, and I do get along with a lot of different saddles. But that's the one where I can isolate other things, because I know, like, this is the saddle, how it feels, like how it feels to sit on it, and where exactly I want to sit on it as well. Because I find the saddle on the Addict, the one that comes with it, I can't remember the model name, but it's quite a wide nose. So it is easier to sit towards the nose, whereas the Power, I find you can't really sit on the nose. Or at least I don't want to. It's quite a narrow nose, but that's also a reason I like it. So
yeah. Yeah, I'd say I've got similar takes on short nose saddles. That like the likes of Pro, who the Pro Stealth has a very wide nose to it, and I too can't ride that comfortably.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's. There's actually another Scott that we've got in for review, and that Ronan. By the time you're listening to this, we might actually see this live. We joked about this on the other on the other Geek Warning podcast. Ronan, you've spent a few years on this review. What is it?
To clarify that, I mean, I haven't really. I got one of these new Scott foils in like the week before
when it was new.
Cycling Tips shut down, and then being unemployed and having a 12 grand or even more expensive bike in my garage wasn't something I was very comfortable with, so I sent it back.
Okay.
And then sort of time passed, and it was only like last year when the foil, which at that point was a 2 or 3 year old bike, won or was used to win the opening stages of both Tour de France. And they were very different stages. One was quite mountainous, Roman Bardet won, and the other was a bunch sprint that Shadow de Cool won. It kind of got me thinking again about the foil, and then shortly after that, the opportunity to test it came up again, and so I took it.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you also have the ultimate version?
I do not. Because of what was available to test, I ended up with I think it's effectively a team bike. It's in Team DSM colors, which wasn't actually a bike that was available to purchase, or a colorway that was able to purchase. And so it also came with like Dura 60 wheels. But then Scott sent the Syncross wheels from the Foil RC Pro build. Those are the Capital One S Aero, not the SLs. And so I'm testing it in. Yeah, I'm testing it in the RC Pro build, but just in a team color, if that makes sense.
In an old team color.
In an old team color, yeah. I think Scott were keen for me to publish this review before the turn of the year, and so was I. But it didn't happen. And I mean, color and beauty and all that is in the eye of the beholder anyway. So it's not the colorway that I'm testing.
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting space to be in, because the bike is a few years old, is it? And they've since brought out this new Addict. Like, what's the team themselves using?
The team are using a mix. Even like so the team now is Q36.5, and they've obviously just signed Tom Pidcock, and he was using the Addict in some races already, but then at the weekend at Het Nieuwsblad he used the foil. So they are still mixing it up, and I guess the nervousness and the hesitation I have about this review, and the reason I am kind of determined to get it out as soon as possible, is that I guess being 3 years old, there's a good chance that this bike is either, I mean, if Scott followed other manufacturers' lead, it would be discontinued pretty soon, or if not, it may well be upgraded soon. There's no indication to say that's going to happen, and I don't think they would have me reviewing it if it was, but there is that risk that, come the summertime or something, I don't know, is the foil going to be updated or not? The reason I was keen to review it regardless of that is that it was sort of the first of the 2022 to 25 generation of aero bikes, I'm calling it, that fully utilized, or at least utilized the new UCI rules more than other frames before them had. And so you've got like deeper aero profiles, you've got thinner tubing throughout, and stuff that I don't think every attempt at such a concept has gone well for other manufacturers. And I wanted to see if Scott, who were one of the first to do it, have pulled it off. And I was particularly interested in like the very thin seat tube, which is something I've found issue with on other frames, but I'm actually, I'm quite impressed with the foil. And for being a 2 or 3 year old bike at this point, it doesn't really show. It still feels as fresh and as fast as some of the bikes that are just 2-3 months old.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. That thin seat tube, have you ridden the Tarmac SL8 yet?
I have not. I've so in the process of wanting to find a manufacturer who had done that thin seat tube well, I reached out to Specialized and I was like, can I have an SL8 for a week or two? They couldn't make that happen for whatever reason, but so I haven't ridden.
They've sold them all.
Possibly, yeah, more than likely.
Yeah. Well, getting away from Scott, Suvi, you've got your hands on at least another bike, if I'm not mistaken. Envy, is that is the Envy still in the works? What is it?
Enve MOG, yes, is still in the works.
MOG.
And yeah, I've probably, to be honest, ridden it as much as the Skull Addict.
That's the gravel bike, right?
Yes, yeah. So it is a
Okay.
gravel bike, and riding gravel has been easier over the winter because, well, as long as I get to the gravel without crashing on the ice, it's been possible to ride. So, well, the ice is gone now, but yeah, the MOG,
I have no idea what that's like.
Hike a
Yeah.
bike on the tarmac sections.
pretty much it has been like that. Yeah. But yeah, the MOG has been an interesting bike. I've got it set up as a mullet, so it's because it obviously comes as a frame only. So I got free kind of rein in deciding what build I want, which was, to be honest, a bit of a how long do I want to spend on this? Because it is after all just a test bike. But I've got it with a dropper and a mullet setup. So it's and 50mm tires. So it's a bit of a more kind of adventure geared, I guess, because you could make it very racy or you could get it quite chunky and load it up and everything. I've got the latter kind of spec for it.
We're talking like mullet as in like SRAM's version of a mullet, which is like a mountain bike drivetrain rear cassette with like a single ring on the front, right? As opposed to like a mountain bike mullet, which would be a
wheels
650B rear wheel.
Yeah, no wheel mullets on this one. No.
Okay,
no.
all right.
But I've actually got it with Shimano. So I've got an XT
Oh, okay.
rear mech, and so older spec in that sense in terms of group set.
Okay. So
Yeah.
is it Di2 then? What's...
It is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's like XT Di2,
Yes. Yeah.
but 12 speed.
No.
Not 12 speed. Okay.
No,
All right. I was
not
wondering
12
if you'd
speed.
done this weird hybrid version of like the e-bike XT, which is kind of... Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that bike has been very nice to ride. I've enjoyed it a
Nice.
lot. The dropper as well. It's something I wanted to try, and I'll probably swap the dropper out to just a rigid post at one point while I get more miles on it. But it has been fun, like especially in the rowdier stuff, because I do go on the mountain bike trails at times, which is a little bit underbiking. But the dropper has been fun on some of the little steep bits that I've not been very confident going down. So yeah, it's an interesting one to have on a gravel bike because I've never had one before.
Yeah. What is the dropper? Is it a mechanical cable actuated dropper?
It is. It's the NVG. Is there a model name to anything else to it? It's just the NVG.
So yeah, so that NVG dropper, it's kind of reminds me of a DT Swiss dropper. Very similar, like sort of upside down design. That how is that actuated? For me, mechanically actuated dropper posts on gravel bikes, for me the sticking point, literally and figuratively speaking, has always been the lever placement. So what sort of lever is on this bike?
It's not great, so I do find it
Yeah.
quite tricky to actually figure out how to function. Because the lever shifter, whatever you'd call it, dropper, it is on the drop, so the curve of the drop. So I would, but then
on the inside.
yeah, exactly on the inside. But then it is quite tricky because I don't really know what finger I'm meant to use to actually
Thumb.
pull it. My thumb's not going anywhere near it. Like my hands are so
Okay.
small, so it has
funny.
become quite like I've needed to figure out a way to twist my hand in a weird way to get to it. And that, I think, it has been one of those things that, as much as I say it's helped me to be more confident, but I need to predict a lot more that, okay, I want to use the dropper because I need to make sure that I can actually twist my hand in a way on the handlebar to actually reach the lever to use the dropper. So it's definitely interesting one. And I don't think there's really space to lift it up or bring it closer. And then in general, there's just not much space. Like, where do you put it without it then actually interfering with the shifter itself? So
I've now
tricky
at this
one.
point used a handful of gravel specific mechanical operated dropper posts, and I hate them all, just purely because of the lever. Like the droppers make so much sense on a mountain bike handlebar, but on a drop handlebar they just become this awkward thing that's either in the way or nowhere near where it needs to be, and there's no real like happy medium. The exception to the rule, I will say, is like Shimano GRX make a left-hand lever that actually the brake lever actually swings in as if it were a shifter. That's actually quite cool. And then nowadays used to be able to hack a SRAM lever, and nowadays there's like one-up components, if I'm not mistaken, and I think Ratio Tech now doing like upgrade kits. So if you've got like an old SRAM double tap mechanical lever, you can retrofit it to work. Those are cool. And yeah, shout out to like wireless SRAM Explore. Being able to like sync it into your levers and it works instead of a front derailleur where you push both shift buttons and it actuates the dropper. That I'm also quite happy with. But the Explore post was terrible for other reasons. Mine I rattled and I had to get rid of it for that reason. So yeah, anyway, that's interesting. It's cool to hear that you've had similar woes with it. But yeah, I think there's still room for improvement in that category of product. So
definitely, I think the shifter one would be the one to go for, and then that's something new to learn, because testing Shimano and SRAM bikes side by side, honestly, that like also the amount of times where I'm going to ride on either or and remember that I'm on a different bike and I'm just shifting all over the place because it doesn't work the same way. So it's something to remember with each bike.
Good question, actually, before we move on. Like jumping between bikes all the time, what's everyone's preferred shifter at the moment? Like what's the one you miss shift with least, given that you're jumping between Shimano and SRAM and probably other things as well?
Is there even a question? It's just SRAM. Like, there's no doubt.
Is it? Mind. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
100%. I'd agree with that.
Like the new SRAM levers are just there is no question in my mind anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Suvi, you've gone quiet. What's
I'm more of a Shimano. I still prefer Shimano.
Yeah. Okay.
But
still feels more natural.
Think like I do now miss shift more. I ride SRAM more than Shimano generally now, so I do miss shift on Shimano because of that. But then, yeah, it's less of an issue, to be honest, because I'm shifting usually on the left when I'm not wanting, and that's not really doing much. Usually it doesn't really impact much.
I was going to say, when I was at the media camp for the Addict out in Girona, we rode the Ultimate in the morning and then the Pro in the afternoon, and the Pro's got Dura-Race and the Ultimate has SRAM Red. And in the afternoon, I've never changed chain rings so many times in quick succession because I couldn't get my head around going back to Shimano.
Your mind had just given up at that point.
Yeah, I'm just used to being like the left does up and the right does down.
Yeah, I would say I've probably spent hours wise 10 times at least of my lifetime on Shimano shifters and Di2 and all that than I have SRAM and like SRAM ETAP. And yet I still find myself misshifting more when going onto a Shimano equipped drop bar bike at this time, which is probably saying something for just how intuitive SRAM actually is. But yeah, and it's sad because my own bike has Shimano, so I feel less. Yeah,
it's a lot easier to explain. Like genuinely, I put my sister, who doesn't really ride bikes, was 2 summers ago, I had a test bike when I was visiting back home, and she's really never ridden electric group sets or anything like that. And I was explaining it to her and she picked it up immediately. Like, what had it been Shimano? Like, I've tried to explain to people who do ride bikes and they've been trying Di2. They're like, but which button is it? It's just someone who has never used it. She picked it up immediately. Like I said, like, oh, it's going this way and it's going that way. Like, just keep left and right. So,
yeah.
And when it's one by, it's even easier. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, anyway, all right. Well, let's. I won't talk too much about the bikes I'm reviewing because they're not imminent. But I've still got the 51 Seeker. I need to spend some more time on that. I got distracted away from it for a little while, and then, I've also got the Lauf Elja still, which is that interesting single pivot mountain bike from the Icelandic brand, and that one has somewhat been delayed. I'm actually waiting on a production rear triangle for it, which should be with me in the next few weeks because I was on a pre-production bike and nothing's gone wrong, but good to test the bike that people actually what they'll be buying. So that rear end will be matched to suit. So yeah, that'll be with me, and then hopefully I can start to wrap that bike up.
You get the kind of part of the challenge for me in reviewing bikes is having to swap between bikes. And so you get to the point where, yes, I'm ready to write up a review on this bike, and then for whatever reason you have to change to another one, and then everything has to be dialed in for me to feel confident in giving my opinion on a bike. And so, then if you're like changing saddles from a bike that you had set up well, and also it just delays the whole process even further. So you get to that point where you're ready to review, you swap bikes, and then you swap back to complete the review, and it takes you another couple of weeks or something, or whatever. I find.
Pro tip that leads to an angry partner for you having too much crap sitting around. You just need enough saddles to cover all the test bikes you've got.
Well, I mean, this is actually part of the problem as well. Is like, so my preferred saddle now has round rails. Both my preferred saddles.
Yeah.
And a lot of bikes these days only come with seat clamps for oval carbon rails.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we get to another problem in that I'm also trying to wrap up my review of the Trek Checkmate. And I will quite often be writing a review and end up like having to go out on the bike to like just be confident in what I'm saying. But having broken that bike, I can't really
checkmate
write it.
For that bike. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm having to juggle that challenge at the moment as well.
Do the listeners know what's happened to that bike?
That one needs new front end.
Oh, new front end. Okay.
We shouldn't laugh at.
Shouldn't laugh too much.
The amount of people who have said to me, "Oh, at least
okay.
it wasn't your own bike," and I'm like, "But it's such a nice bike. To see it in this condition just makes me sad."
It's almost better when it is your own bike rather than like none of us want to break review product unless we're like given permission and we're trying to break it to test it for something specific. But we shouldn't be going out and breaking complete bikes on purpose. So I mean, I've only done one or two where I've properly damaged the bike, but it's
I mean, I didn't do it on purpose.
No, exactly, but like none of us want to, but it's just it's a bit awkward when you do. Hey, like it's not great, but in a sense I'd rather crash my own bike in that sense, but
so it's when it's your own, you don't really have to explain it to anyone. It's just like, well, it crashed, but now you have this, you need to email someone and explain what happened, and maybe multiple people what exactly went down here.
It's kind of the opposite. It's like when you break your own bike, then that's an explanation for why I bought myself this new bike.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well let's move on. Let's talk about some of the components or accessories that each of us have in hand. And Suvi, I know you've been really busy with small gadgety things that may or may not be working. So what have you been busy with? What's keeping you stressed?
Oh, stressed, yeah. I've now come to realize how the lives of the likes of DC Rainmaker and GP Llama are, because I've been testing rear radars. And I thought that reviewing bikes, they've got loads of different things that you need to take on account and test and things. But honestly, electronics, it's another world. And these rear radars, so I'm testing 5 radars from Garmin, Brighton, Trek, Magic Shine, and Giant. Yeah, so a good range of radars. But yeah, it's been a slow process because first of all, it's been tricky to get them. There's been some updates to some of them, which has led to some interesting emails from different brands saying like, "Oh, I don't feel confident sending this against this radar," which tells something.
That's not great. Yeah.
No, but overall, I would say they all do the job to some extent of detecting cars and other objects behind me. But there's some that haven't done too well, and probably I'm not going to maybe talk too much about the ones that have done okay. So yeah, Garmin, like obviously that's probably the benchmark for the RTL515.
It was the original. I mean, they got into that game by acquiring someone else, so that makes sense. They've been out the longest, so
yeah, and that's been working really well. It's not like none of these are accurate to 100%. Like they will make mistakes and they will give both false positives and false negatives. So they'll say there's a car when there isn't, and they'll not tell you when there's a car. And yeah. And Brighton, probably I would say that one's been, if I'm picking on something that hasn't worked with that one, that's the Guardia R300L. It's been catchy. all of these names, honestly, I'll get to Trek. That's the only one that is easy to say. But the Brighton, what's been really bothering me about that one is that it keeps telling me about the low battery, which is a good thing, that it keeps that it tells me that the battery is coming low because you want your rear light definitely to be on for your ride. But it keeps telling it when it's definitely not low battery. Like, it will still last. It starts telling me at the beginning of the ride, and I ride 3 hours. No, it's still going solid. It will still go for the next ride, but it just keeps telling me that the battery is going low. So it's been quite an interesting one with that one. The detection aside.
Do you think it's the cold weather maybe tricking that, or does it sound like a more widely reported issue with that one?
I think there's been others who've said the same thing. Okay. And I will say this too, because I'm in the process of, like, I've got all these notes that I'm going to talk about here about what my experience is, but obviously I'll go back to the brands and ask about these. So I don't have all the answers from the brands, and I have not yet asked Brighton, like, what's the chat with this? Like, is it because of the weather, or is it because of something else? Is there maybe a firmware update? Because there is another one of these, which is Giant radar. That's the TL300R. I don't know why all of these have to honestly give these names that are so hard to remember, and they get really messed up. That one has been very, very happy to detect all sorts of things from the beginning. So it has been detecting bus stops and lampposts and giving a lot of not necessarily...
Just in case they jump out at you, huh?
Exactly. I mean, when you're riding around Glasgow, you never know. You better be careful with the bus stops. No, just saying. But yeah, it was quite happy alerting me about all sorts of things that weren't there and were definitely not moving. But Giant did then contact me about that, and I just updated on Monday the firmware. And I've had a couple of rides with the radar, and it seems to be a lot better. So it's not detecting all these objects.
So my question with this is, are these products, are they all available for purchase at this moment?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the part that worries me, is that some of these, like, if there's updates coming out that are like on a safety critical product, and these software updates coming out, it's almost like they're using customers as beta testers.
I know.
I mean, that might be a bit much to hear, but like, it kind of is.
Yeah.
No, I'm 100% with you, Dave. Like, if a radar is warning you about an object that is not approaching you from the rear, be it a bus stop, a sign, or whatever else it might be, at that point, as far as I'm concerned, the radar is useless. It's a bit like the boy who cried wolf.
It's a hindrance to your safety at that point.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not to do with it's just that you're not going to trust it anymore. Because, like, I've had with these radars as well, that I've had to turn them off, some of them, because they've been quite happily alerting. And when it's busy traffic, like if I'm riding with others on it, I have warned them in the beginning of the ride, like, I'm testing this, like, I have to have it on. But at some point I'm like, I can't deal with this, because it's just ping, 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 like constant beeping.
Yeah.
Which head units have you been trying it with?
Well, I've been also testing different head units. So yeah, but I've been using Garmin and Hammerhead mostly because I found that they're actually working quite well. There's some smaller brand head units that I've been testing as well. And I found, because there is differences between the head units as well. Well, not only in the alerts that they give you, like the noise, but also how well the actual, what do you call it? Like the indicators on the screen work. Because especially if there's multiple cars, some of them, they kind of pile all the dots or the little car signs together into this little group. And then they just poof, like some of them just disappear. And it's like, was it 5 cars or was it 2 cars, or like what happened here?
That's kind of why I ask as well, is because I've found that, like, especially the beeps, how intuitive those are. Like with a Garmin, you don't even have to look down at the screen. You just know what's happening. Is it a car approaching, or is it an all clear? Whereas with the Wahoo Ace, when I tried that originally, it was like it just wasn't as intuitive to just use the beeps as a warning. And the exact example you give with multiple vehicles approaching from behind, it would give you like an all clear for each car that passes, but then there would be another car immediately behind that would then immediately warn you about again. And it was just like, in busy traffic environments where you need these things most, Or perhaps you don't need them most there because you're more aware that there is vehicles around you. Perhaps you need them in environments where there's no traffic. Anyway, they got very annoying in those busy environments.
It is a tricky one, and I think that's what I was kind of hinting in the beginning, that there's so many variables to this. I know there's a lot of variables to a lot of testing, but this is the difficulty with this. There's now so many different cycling computers. All of these seem to really work a little bit differently with each computer as well, and the way that the computers show it. And then you can maybe download a third-party app. I know like some of the people who test these, that they're then better at like actually telling you the distance. So it's and
potentially endless, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think this is where I'll have to draw a line somewhere and just say this is the testing I did, and in this testing with these computers, these are the ones that did this and these are the ones that did that. But it might be different for someone else.
It also strikes me a bit like a category that I've been looking at, which is like electric tire inflators. That it's somewhat like the windmill at the mini golf course, that you got to get your ball past the windmill blades. It's always there to block you, and there's always something else. There's always it's always coming back around, and that's a really bad analogy for me saying that. It feels like this category always has new entrants coming into it, which makes it hard to know when to publish.
I thought you were going to raise a point I was about to mention there, but slight addition to what you just said, Dave, in that I see this as a category that Garmin has been hugely successful in, and has really developed a product that there are very few issues with. Like the Garmin radars just work pretty much seamlessly, I've found, with Garmin head units. And
that's what's made it successful, right? Like it never would have been a successful product category if it didn't work.
But what we've got now, I feel, is everybody else wants to jump on that bandwagon and cash in on the radar market, which is fine so long as you're cashing in with a product that actually works. But if you're bringing a product to market early that isn't fully baked, that's not fine.
It's reckless, if anything, on a product like this. So anyway, that's a cool one. Suvi, what's your rough timeline on that? How you think it's 1 month longer?
Another year.
Oh, okay.
Is it on the
Never. All right.
It's not even on the radar yet, is it?
We'll just make your radar update a reoccurring theme on the podcast, and we'll just check in. You'll never have to write it.
No, I'm hoping a couple more weeks. Like I said, I just can't keep doing these different tests like endlessly and using with different head units. I already have, like the other day I had 4 head units and like all sorts of different things on my handlebars.
Your bars are only 36 centimeters wide.
I know. I genuinely, I swapped on my own bike for this sole purpose now. Yesterday I was swapping round handlebars, 38s on it, so I can attach more things on the bars easier. So yeah.
Amazing.
I'll maybe take a picture of that.
Yeah, please do. Alex, what have you been busy with?
So I've spent a good part of the winter trying out Fizik's new customized 3D printed saddle offering. And I'm getting towards the point where that review is going to be ready to head to the site in the coming weeks.
Tell us the price.
Would you like the alloy railed or the carbon railed saddle?
Whichever one, or both.
So the alloy railed one starts at a very reasonable £460, and the carbon fiber one is £500.
So do you know, is that USD as well? Is it 500 USD as well?
No. So in the US, the prices start at $500, and the carbon one is $600, so a little bit more.
Ouch. Okay. All right.
But the thing to note with that is, if you're in the US, it's going to cost a lot more than that, because as part of the process, you have to visit a selected one-to-one Fizik retailer, which are the people that do the 3D pressure mapping on the saddle. And currently in the US, there are 5 stores. So unless you live in some very select locations, you're going to have a fairly hefty travel bill just to get to the store to begin the process.
Yeah, the US is quite a big place to only have 5 stores with this.
There's also none in Australia. So as we discussed in a recent meeting, if you're in Australia and you think you want to get yourself one of these custom saddles, the nearest shop is Osaka, so you'd also get a lovely trip to Japan.
Nice. It's worth visiting, but so it's a 3D. What is the scan exactly? Is it like a mat that you sit on, or is it Is there a camera involved that you're going into a booth with? Is it what's going on?
So the process is fairly involved, and Fizik do stress that before you go down this route, you have to have had a bike fit, because the saddle is customized to how you sit on the bike. If you're starting from an improper position, you're already going to create a product that's not right for you. But once you have a bike fit and you decide that you want to spend £600 on a saddle, you head down to your quote-unquote local retailer, and you do a questionnaire to begin with, where you kind of describe your riding preferences, how you ride, and how you find your current saddle. And then from there, they use a pressure mapping seat cover over your existing saddle to work out how you're sitting on the bike currently. And this, combined with the questionnaire, is enough for them to work out what they think the best base model Fizik saddle shape is for you. You can override that if you've used Fizik saddles in the past and you say there is a shape you really enjoy or a shape you really don't get on with. You can overrule what the app suggests. And then from there, the base model saddle from Fizik is placed on the bike and the same pressure mapping is repeated.
I think Ronan might be asking the same question I might be thinking of. Go on.
I think Ronan's going to have a meltdown.
Yeah.
Is the question you're thinking of, Dave, which comes first, chicken or egg?
Yeah, I'm thinking, how do you pressure map off a saddle that may be wrong?
The bike fit has to come first according to Fizik, but if you're using a different saddle, then Alex, did Fizik say to you, here is the saddle from our range that we think is going to work for you, go get a bike fit with that one, and then come back and we'll custom 3D print it? No. Because, I'm still not sure, I'm still not convinced, but that would make it better. But I think, if judging by everything else you're saying, that really should be the process.
My biggest caveat with the whole process is, for something that's supposed to help you and is customized to you, there is obviously no try before you buy. And there's actually no proof until you have the saddle delivered to you that there is any benefit to you on the bike compared to just trying a different shape saddle or just a saddle from a different manufacturer. What's the return policy? Like, do you get like 30 days try? Like, I don't know. I've actually reached out to them in the last week to clarify this, because it's not made very clear at all by their website. Because it is a custom product, so they cannot. But then you have some consumer rights. I don't know.
Alex, I'm kind of curious. What part of it do you feel is most customized? Is it like the sit bone area, or is it the whole thing? Or because what I'm looking for in a saddle these days is a saddle that has a deep central channel that runs through the nose and relieves soft tissue pressure in a more aerodynamic position. So I'm basically describing a TT saddle, and an article I published last week on Escape Collective will detail why I think that is good for drop bar bikes. But I've had a Posedla 3D printed custom saddle for a bit. I've ridden it a few times, and the nose, while the rear of that is sort of based off an indentation of my rear end from sitting on a foam box, I don't see how, it just doesn't get what I need from it in terms of comfort from a saddle, because the nose is still this big blocky thing at the front that still causes me soft tissue pressure. This is something I found in testing my saddle. It's great in concept. When I received the saddle, you feel the density of the surface, especially in the sit bone area, and you can feel that left to right there is a difference, which Fizik are confident will correct some of the issues I have in my posture on the bike. But yeah, as you kind of move your thumbs across the front of the saddle towards the nose, I found the midsection to be a lot harder than where I put my sit bones. And then also at the very front, there was just very minimal padding altogether. So if you found yourself sitting more towards the front of the saddle, you're kind of just on the base, kind of in an unpadded section of the saddle. And one of the things that led to, when fitting the saddle compared to the Specialized power it replaced, is it took a lot of time to find the right saddle angle. Because the rear section of the saddle where my sit bones would be is so soft, it had the kind of effect of pitching the saddle backwards. And although it was set horizontally, effectively it was nose up in that position because of how hard the middle section was compared to the rear. And this just meant I ended up spending probably the best part of 2 weeks each ride just moving the saddle angle ever so slightly until I found a position that worked. And when the article goes out, you'll see in the pictures, the saddle ended up being what looks to be fairly nose down, especially compared to how I'd normally ride a bike. But
I think if there was a way of capturing the relative saddle angle, it would be far closer to how I would run a normal saddle.
Alex, I'm not a physiotherapist and I'm not a Fizik saddle manufacturing staff operator or whatever. I'm also not a bike fitter, but I am confident in saying that the suggestion that a saddle can force some fix in your postural issues is baloney. Is that the word the Americans use? Yeah, okay.
Well, it's interesting.
None of us are American.
I was chatting to a bike fitter last night, actually, who was talking about this very subject, and he's basically saying that more what a custom saddle would do that's been pressure mapped is facilitate the bad posture rather than correct it. It would allow you to sit in that position. Whereas, having corrective measures done in a bike fit, whether that's shims under cleats to help with leg length discrepancy or custom orthotics in shoes or any other kind of component of a traditional bike fit, will be better suited to correcting issues with posture rather than a saddle which may just allow you to sit with your hips diagonally across the saddle and a little bit wonky.
Yep. And then you get into the argument of whether you should just leave the body to be where it naturally wants to be or whether you should be correcting that, which is, again, into the realm of bike fitters and perhaps beyond the realm of expertise of what you'd... Maybe not the expertise, but the amount of time you're given when you're going in to get fitted for a saddle. So... I think it's a complicated one.
Fizik do offer a follow-up. So once you have the saddle, when you've been fitted for the saddle, once it arrives, it can be delivered either to your home or to the store you got it done in. And as part of the service, they will fit that and do the pressure mapping again with a new saddle fitted. The thing for me is I just don't see, when we're talking about the cost, if you've got to travel, a couple of hours, couple of 100 miles, finding the time, but also paying another £150 on the train to take you and your bike just to have a saddle fitted, all of a sudden the saddle is quickly mounting up over £1,000.
No one's catching the train that's buying the saddle, I'm just saying. But it's, I don't know, what strikes me is, and this is going to sound very harsh and I shouldn't judge a brand based on its history, but also I can't not, is Fizik is the brand for that a decade insisted people should buy a saddle on what bull they're most similar to. And I think that is...
There was also a snake, Dave. And a
comedian. It was what?
A bull, a snake, and a comedian.
Oh, okay. So there you go. What animal your flexibility is most likened to? At a time where the science is kind of pointing towards like saddle widths and shape and all that mattering a whole lot more than what Fizik was sort of marketing. So... I don't know. I'm coming into this very, very skeptical, and I guess all of this will be covered in your review. But yeah, I do think that I'd probably put more trust in other brands doing this fitment to the level that I'd expect of it to be.
Even if you do decide this is a route for you, there's a lot of avenues you need to have ticked off before this kind of seems like the right place to go. I think just the simple things like trying a couple of different saddle shapes can alleviate a lot of issues people find, but also bib shorts. The interaction between the bib short and the saddle can be responsible for saddle sores and discomfort, and I think it's easier to try and rectify things through this method than spend a day travelling to a clinic, wait 3 weeks for a saddle to be sent to you, and then find out that it may or may not have helped.
Or just put a time trial saddle on your drop bar bike. Which was going to be the product I was going to tell you about, Dave, but we've talked so much about saddles now, I think I've already covered it. And I have a podcast and an article coming on the Aerothan Tri-Mid, which is not even a time trial saddle, but a triathlon saddle that has transformed my gravel bike.
Okay, all right, nice. So let's move on from saddles. But Alex, it sounds like an interesting one. I'm sure many will want to read it, given the popularity of like the specialized mirror 3D printed saddle. So yeah, I think that sure to be a good one. But Ronan, do you have a product that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I was going to talk about that saddle. In terms of what else I've recently got in, I got in the Bont Riot 24, which is sort of Bont's mid-range offering. I got in the Riot because, well, first of all, it's like available in a wider fit, which I specifically want to try. It's also not quite as stiff, which is something I wanted to also try and alleviating some of the foot issues I've had. It's sort of,
probably still
more
stiffer.
reasonably priced, but still like double the price of the most premium shoes that I was given when I started cycling. So
How much?
that's
is
all
that?
relative. I think they're about £180.
What, the Riots are 180?
I mean retail price, but yeah, they're $219 US. This is the newest one. They have BOA dials rather than the Velcro straps that the Riot used to have. And
that's the problematic day and age that we live in cycling, that Ronan says a pair of shoes is $220 US, and Suvi is like, oh, that's actually pretty good value, because we're so used to things being like double that. It's just, I was thinking the exact same thing of Suvi's remark. It's like, oh, that's actually less than I thought. But,
I mean, so that was
the problem.
I was checking a helmet yesterday that is like £370. So I was like, oh, well, that's quite a lot for helmets, but maybe 2 years' time we're going to be like, oh, 250 quid for a helmet? Nah, like not too bad.
In order of like the motivation for bringing these Riot shoes in was, first of all, the width option. Secondly, that they're not claimed to be as, they're not the Bond's stiffest option. I wanted something that gives a little bit more flex, and then sort of equal to that, just the price point. And in terms of that price point and what you're missing out on, the only thing I can immediately point to is two-way adjustable BOA dials. So these are the BOA dials that tighten up, and then to release them you have to like fully disengage them, and quite often you just want to like back it off a tiny bit if you've gone too far or whatever, where you have to start again, which I don't. And then also like beneath winter overshoes and that, these lower profile BOAs they're a bit harder to sort of actuate beneath the overshoes.
Did you get them in the gold color?
Yeah, you get them in gold. I didn't. I got them in white.
Boring.
So, and what I particularly like about them is the way. So obviously the bathtub profile that Bont used. The sole wraps around the edge of the foot, but the white upper sort of tapers up towards the ankle as it approaches the heel, and so regardless of what your pedaling style is, it looks like you've got a high heel toe down pedaling style, which is the look everybody wants, but I don't think is actually really as the most optimal solution. And so I've been trying to get my foot flatter, but I still got that good looking high heel look, which I don't know if they meant that or not, but it's an added bonus I found.
So is it a bathtub design? Because a lot of their newer shoes, like the Vapors, have like a much reduced bathtub, like a much shallower.
I mean, it's a long time since I've used Bont, so I can't say how it compares to how, but it definitely the sole does it wraps around,
comes up.
Yeah, it comes up. Yeah. So
okay.
It may not be as deep as it once was. I don't know, to be honest. And if I have time, Dave, I have one other thing.
What is it?
It's a watch. It's not, Alex, don't get your hopes up. It's not a sports watch. Sorry. It's a very stylish watch, I think. I mean, beauty's in the
Are you joining the ranks of pro riders just blatantly advertising high-end watches on the finish line?
I suppose it is a high-end watch. It's from, I should say what it is. It's from Bravur, and I got sent this thing about a year ago. They're like a Swedish watch brand that specialize in cycling themed luxury watches, I think is probably the best way I can describe it. I'd kind of like send an email like, oh, hold off on sending this until I figure out if there's a way I can review this thing. And in the meantime, it showed up at my door, and then sort of being a watch guy, I got tempted into trying it on, and have since been trying to figure out how the hell do you review a watch. And to be honest, it's not the best looking watch I've ever seen, in my opinion. It's the version of it that I got sent. So it's a Bravur Pew, and the Pew stands for Peugeot, and it's from their Team Heritage range. And when you hear some of the sort of backstory to the design, it does kind of get interesting then, in that like the strap is sort of mimicked on 1960s era watch strap. The actual watch face has like a checkered flag in keeping with the Peugeot team jersey. It's got black squares in keeping with that. It's got a hint of green there because at one point Peugeot had like a BP logo on their shoulders. And yeah, like it kind of when you know the backstory, it is kind of appealing, I would say. But I don't know how the hell to review that thing.
A mention here. This is the review that it's gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, like I've worn it on a few occasions with people who I know are watch people to try and see if it elicited a comment. And
is this something you would wear when you're riding?
No, well, so I have this idea. Like if I had like a classic frame, I don't know. I've always had this idea of owning a Colnago Master or Mexico or something like that. And on such occasions, I might, yeah. But I think what it actually is like I mean, like the question that kept coming up in my mind throughout this is like, what is it? What is a watch even? Like some of the really expensive ones we see. Like I as I say, I do appreciate them, but when you really think about it, they don't tell the time any better than your iPhone does these days. Probably actually
it's a
not
statement
as well.
Piece or
it's
a
like
fashion piece,
yeah, exactly. It's a statement piece. It's a fashion piece. It's something that the owner of it likes and has treated themselves to, or someone has treated them to it. And when you think about this through that lens, and being a cyclist, and being a fan of that era of the sport and that, and Peugeot and all that, then it kind of, I can wear it knowing the backstory to it and appreciate that. It's not strong enough for me to go out and buy one for myself. But it's kind of when you have to start explaining that to others, this is what this means and this is what that relates to and all that, I think it's kind of lost at that point.
Yeah, when they start backing away from you and telling you that they left their oven on, then it's yeah. Yeah, I guess my question for you, Ronan, is: has this watch accidentally and unintentionally sent 200 emails to your mother and your wife,
No.
telling them that you've crashed?
No, it has not.
Oh, okay. So it's got that going for itself versus a bike computer you've been riding with.
Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah, good old fashioned.
One last thing about this. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, Ronan, but it says here that it comes in a handcrafted premium leather case that can be used as a stylish bar bag. Like now we're getting to it. Like this is what you should be reviewing, the bar bag. But we've probably talked enough about this watch.
The bar bag is exceptional. Like, I mean,
oh, wow.
so nice that you definitely would not put this.
I mean,
you would not put this on your bike.
No, you would when you're wearing that watch and you're riding your Colnago
for
and
the one dry day per year that we get here. Yes, fair enough. But I mean, yeah, you even then,
that's quite cool.
Such a nice bar bag. Yeah. For listeners who can't see it, it's a brown leather bar bag with good old fashioned straps and buckles. And inside it, we currently have my camera.
Well, if you suddenly see Ronan taking a lot of handheld photos of products with a watch sneakily making it into image,
there's a return label.
Big watch.
There's a return label in here.
Big watch face. Oh, okay.
Maybe we should do a little article, like a quick one of like things that we've been sent that we don't really know what to do with. Ronan can include his watch. I can include the Canyon tubes that I got last week.
Oh yeah, you got frame tubes, painted frame tubes. Yeah.
No, I like that idea.
Yeah, a random.
I'm in Australia. I don't get sent anything by accident or unintentionally. It's I have to plead for things to be shipped to our little country.
Dave, we're really interested to hear, what are you testing? Components, tools, everything else.
Yes. Some of it isn't in my hands yet, and I probably couldn't talk about it if it were. Other things, I just took delivery of the largest thing I've taken delivery of, and the heaviest thing I've taken delivery of since I bought an e-bike, which is Sinter's bed-in disc brake machine, which is quite the workshop tool to be delivered. And So yeah, I mean it's 30 kilos. It's not that big, and it's designed to like you set a wheel onto it, and as soon as a wheel touches it, and it's turned on. It basically senses the wheels that is there, and it starts running you. It spins up the wheel, and it starts running you through like these pre-configured modes of basically giving you resistance to brake against. And it goes, it tells you when to pull the brake lever, it tells you when to let go of the brake lever, it tells you when to pull the brake lever, and it repeats that what seems like 5 times per wheel. And I need to do some more testing because 5 times this machine managed to get a lot of heat into the brakes in order to bed them in, and yeah, I'm wondering whether like the smell of burning brake pads is actually what you actually need in order to properly bed in a brake. So more testing is needed. I'm definitely having fun with it, but yeah, I'd say running it through like 2 to 3 cycles versus like the preset 5 cycles, I'd say seems to be getting the brake to a point where I think it's exceptionally good. And yeah, so I need to figure out whether going the extra 1 to 2 cycles beyond that is making the brake even better, or if it's just wearing out pads, which a friend of mine joked that would make sense given the machine is actually made by a brake pad manufacturer. So
yeah, it's a bit like nutrition companies like maximizing the recommended amount of powder you should use when you're mixing up your bottles. You could probably get away with a little bit less, but then you don't buy as much in.
Yeah. So yeah, wanted to test. I think I actually need to call in a bunch of identical brake pads and rotors and actually do some back-to-back testing of different setups bed in different ways and see what comes of it. But it's a fun tool, and I can definitely see this being hugely useful for shops in efficiency and giving a better product for it.
How much does it cost, Dave?
This is going to sound bad, but I tend not to look at pricing until I am ready to write the thing, because I find like you and I discussed this on the other podcast, Ronan, where neither of us like to look at a geometry chart beyond like stack and reach figures in order to figure out what size bike we need, but we try not to look at things like trail until we've ridden the bike, because it can kind of cloud our judgment. And I'm a little bit like that with tools. I try not to look at the price up front, because then I worry I might judge it more harshly or more positively than it deserves. So I like to kind of fly blind. But I think, based on conversations third hand, I think it's like $3,000 US. Yeah, I will find out. But again, it's not really something that is for a consumer to buy. We did hear from a member that did buy one for themselves actually, and they love it, and I guess it's pretty cool. Like it is a very cool tool to have if it's in your budget, but it really is more made for a busy workshop, and in that sense they wouldn't be paying retail, and there's payback period on that. They can actually work out how many services how much they earn off a service of bed in versus how many they'd get through in a week, and
how many extra brake pads they can sell.
Period is how many extra brake pads they can sell. Yeah, so I think it's a much easier equation when you're a big workshop that should be bedding in pads anyway, and it's saving you significant time and giving you better results for it. So but that's a fun one.
Have you ever used the Cyclone, their version?
No, so I've like seen some of the other ones at trade shows and some of them even in other shops I've visited, but this is the first one that I've really spent some time on, and for me it's probably a little bit unfair to say, but it's perhaps the most interesting because it's kind of like a late entrant into the market. Like the Cyclone was one of the first, if not the first. There's another one I think called like the Disco-Matic or something, if I'm not mistaken. It's a wooden framed one, which is made to be more of a price point option out of the US, like easier to ship, sort of flat packed almost. And this one's come from, it's the first one to come from a brake pad manufacturer. Sinter do actually make their own brake pads in Slovenia, and I think they've managed to sit back and see everyone else's and come into the market with this, and they're assembling these in house as well, which is kind of interesting. So not cheap, but seems to have some features and functionality that others don't have, and I think that's quite cool. So but yeah, I think there's the review of the tool, but more importantly, I'm quite keen to just get geeky on bed-in process and bed-in procedure and how much heat a brake needs and all that. So
I look forward to that.
Allow me to do that. Yeah. So anyway, Well, I think that's plenty for this first round and this play of the new theme. And I guess if you've made it this far, then thanks for sticking around. And also, it'd be great to hear what you think of this episode, what you think we can do better, what you liked, what you'd like to hear more of in future, and all that. So we'll set up a site post on Escape Collective for this, and please jump into the comments there and let us know what you think. All right, everyone. Suvi, Ronan, Alex, good to catch up. Good to hear from you. Sounds like you're all got plenty going on. So until the next one, we might hear from each of you sooner than that. But thanks for coming on.